Hey guys, Mulligan here, and welcome to part 3 of my preview of the upcoming Eternal set, the Dusk Road. We'll be talking about the cards from the upcoming expansion that were spoiled yesterday, along with another one spoiled previously. As with the Omens of the Past preview videos, I will only be talking about the cards as far as their use in Constructed, unless the card is absolutely terrible in that format, in which case I will briefly talk about its potential use in Draft. Let's hop in. So the first card is Rindra the Duskblade, a 4-power 5/5 unit requiring 2 Primal and 2 Shadow Influence to play. When this comes into play, you summon Nightfall, and Rindra has Lifesteal and Overwhelm at night. So, we got another article revealing this card as well as almost all the other cards in this video. This time around, it was written by Patrick Chapin, and revealed the details on how the new Nightfall mechanic works in the Dusk Road. Just like last time, I'm gonna read what the Nightfall mechanic is word for word from the article before we get into talking about this card. So here's how Nightfall works. The first Nightfall card that's played in a turn makes it night, and extends it by a turn for each player. When you start a turn at night, you draw an additional card and take 1 damage. The extra cards can smooth out draws and provide added fuel to increase the options at your disposal, but be warned, the night is extremely dangerous. Damage from night can't be responded to, nor can it be stopped by Aegis. So, I was actually tuned into Serino's stream when this article came out, if I recall, and after hearing him read this, the first thing I thought of was the Shadow Eclipse event that they held a few months ago to celebrate the solar eclipse we had in America at that time. There's a good chance that the event was a testing ground for this mechanic, since the visual effects on the game board changed to reflect nighttime. I'm hoping it looks better now than it did then. Not that it looked bad back then, and assuming that's what Nightfall is going to represent. But anyway, back to the card. I'm wondering if Feln aggro or mid-range is going to make a comeback because Rindra is pretty insane. An impending doom stat line with additional upside for the first 2 turns he's in play. Slightly less evasion, and the influence requirement is heavy, but more aggressive Feln decks already ran Midnight Gale, who is even harder to play on turn 3. There is a downside though, that is bigger than impending dooms, and that is the Nightfall mechanic itself. You're giving your opponent an additional card during the night. Granted, you will get one as well, and you'll both take damage. It will be interesting to see how Nightfall plays into the constructed metagame. I'm very excited for this one, and it only gets better as we look at the other cards in this video. The next card is Dark Veil Agent, a 2-power 2/2 unit requiring 1 Primal Influence to play. When he comes into play, you summon Nightfall. When you start your turn at night, your Unseen get Aegis. I'm actually more excited about this card than Rindra, because I think this has an even better chance of seeing play in Constructed. Aegis is still extremely powerful, forcing decks with traditional removal to typically 2-for-1 themselves in order to remove a threat. When you make that a board-wide buff, any card that has that effect is put on a whole nother level. Just look at Stand Together. While this card is specifically for the unseen tribal cards, if the cards revealed in this article are of any indication, we might be looking at an aggressive Feln deck in the Dusk Road metagame featuring a lot of unseen units, since they all look playable so far. Even if we don't, this card could be solid in Huru decks. A great way to get back the popped Aegis of a Shelterwing Rider, or to protect your Kothon. And even a Twin Strike Master gaining Aegis is powerful. One thing that has to be kept in mind though is that you don't get the Aegis until the start of your next turn, giving your opponent the chance to remove this card. And they're drawing 2 cards to do that since it will be Nightfall. The saving grace is that this is a 2-drop, and if it comes down on time, your opponent might not find an answer even with 2 draws. I expect this to show up in Constructed at some point. Hopefully it sticks around. The next card is Cover of Darkness, a 5-power spell requiring 1 shadow influence to play. This grants Nightfall, and you give 2 of your units unblockable this turn. At first glance, I didn't think much of this card, but this card has some potential the more I think about it. I could actually see this being used in Stone Scar, depending on what shadow units we get that have Nightfall. Maybe even fire units. They might have to be better than the units we already have in decks like Burn Queen and Rally, however. But even if we don't, the early game units that Stone Scar has are big for their cost, and sometimes you just need to push the final points through that an Obliterate or Soulfire Drake alone won't take care of. Impending Doom plus Champion of Chaos lethals are possible with this, if you're being blocked out by a Sandstorm Titan, let's say. Outside of that, this card reminds me of a less powerful Crystallize, but with a Nightfall effect, giving additional card draw, instead of stunning an entire enemy board. This could be a potential game ender, so I would keep an eye on this one. The next card is Mirror's Nightshade, a 2-power 3/2 unit requiring 1 shadow influence to play. She has +1/+1 while an enemy is cursed, and an ultimate where you pay 5 to play Nyctophobia on the enemy player. Immediately, I thought of putting this in a more aggressive found deck. Forget the fact that she creates her own curse with her ultimate. Stunning something with Permafrost and following up with this card, or worse, vice versa, is pretty devastating for your opponent. Nyctophobia is pretty powerful though, and really puts your opponent on a clock in the mid game, assuming you're playing this card in a more aggressive deck. They might be taking a ton between the Curse and Argenport Instigator. And speaking of which, I could even see this card being played in an Argenport deck, given they also have access to Wanted Poster. Despite currently having the best mid-range unit in the game, in Tavrod, Argenport can have trouble finishing games due to lack of direct damage, and this helps with that. I'd be surprised if she doesn't see constructed play. Solid 2-drop in my opinion. Now the next card is Lunar Magus, a 3-power 2/4 unit requiring 2-time influence to play. When this comes into play, you summon Nightfall, and when you start your turn at night, you gain 4 health. Solid 3-drop. It's nice that Direwolf is not limiting the Nightfall mechanic to just shadow units, though I guess time makes sense too. A nice defensive stat line, and this might find its way into Xenon Life Force decks actually. This on turn 3 into Beckoning Lumen on turn 4 seems pretty solid. There was some talk of this finding its way into certain Chalice variants, but I doubt it will be the traditional version since this doesn't topple Combrei Healer in my opinion. But now I'm interested in what other possible time units we get that have Nightfall. At absolute worst, this should be a solid pick and draft. So now that we know what the Nightfall mechanic does, we finally get to talk about a card that was previously revealed. And that would be Agile Deathja, a 5-power 3/3 unit requiring 2 time and 2 shadow influence to play. It has ambush at night, and your other dinosaurs have +1/+1. So now that we know what the mechanic does, this is an interesting effect. The stat line is a bit weak for a 5-drop, especially since this can't buff itself, and the influence cost is really heavy for what it does. But I still don't want to just cast this card aside. There hasn't been enough reason to play Xenon dinosaurs or even to splash Shadow into current dinosaur lists. The only other Xenon multifaction dino is Shadowlands Bonepicker, and while it's apparently an all-star in draft, it hasn't made any impact in constructed. We definitely need more support for a Xenon dinosaur deck, otherwise this will just get passed up for constructed, and it might even be a hard sell in draft too. Thanks for listening to my thoughts on the spoilers from the upcoming Dusk Road set that we got on Wednesday. If you liked the video, feel free to hit the like button. Let me know in the comments if you have any feedback for the content and what cards are you excited for in the new set. I've got other Eternal content on this channel as well, so feel free to look around. Anyway, thanks for taking time out of your day to watch this, and I'll see you all soon. Take care.